The warning lights flashed red across the spaceship's control panel. James Wilson gripped his seat as the small ship shook violently. The strange purple atmosphere of the alien planet pulled his ship down like a hungry monster. Come on," he whispered, trying to keep the nose of the ship up. But it was no use. Something in the purple clouds had killed his engines. All around him, the ship's computers screamed warnings in their robotic voices. Through the cockpit window, he could see the alien landscape rushing up to meet him. Strange trees with glowing blue leaves covered the ground below. They looked beautiful, but right now, they were just another thing that could kill him. James checked his emergency beacon one last time. Nothing. The same purple energy that killed his engines had also destroyed his communication systems. Earth Control wouldn't know where he was. No one would know where to look for him. The ship dropped faster now. James pulled back on the controls with all his strength, trying to turn the crash into something he might survive. The trees were getting closer. He could see they were much bigger than Earth trees, each one as tall as a skyscraper. This is going to hurt, he said to himself, bracing for impact. The ship hit the first tree branches. The sound of metal tearing filled his ears. The whole world spun around him as the ship bounced from tree to tree. Something exploded behind him. Emergency foam sprayed from the ceiling, covering him just as the ship slammed into the ground. Everything went black. When James opened his eyes, smoke filled the cockpit. His head hurt, but he was alive. The emergency foam had saved him. He pushed the deflating foam away and looked around. Most of his equipment was destroyed. The front window was cracked but not broken. Outside, he could see the strange blue leaves of the alien trees glowing in the darkness. Darkness. He checked his watch. The crash had knocked him out for hours. Night was falling on this alien world. James tried the radio one more time. "This is Explorer 7. Does anyone copy? I've crash-landed on." He stopped. He didn't even know what planet this was. The storm had blown him off course before killing his engines. Only static answered him. The temperature was dropping fast. James grabbed his emergency pack. Food for a week, water purifier, basic tools, and a plasma pistol. He didn't want to stay in the ship. If the power cells were damaged, they could explode. The ship's door groaned as he forced it open. Strange smells filled his nose, like flowers and metal mixed together. The air was breathable according to his suit sensors, so he lifted his helmet visor. The blue leaves above him cast an eerie light over everything. Something moved in the bushes nearby. James spun around, his hand on his pistol. Nothing there, but he could feel eyes watching him. The trees seemed to glow brighter for a moment, then dimmed again. A sound like singing drifted through the forest, but not human singing. It was higher, stranger, almost like crystal glasses being played. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. James checked his compass. It spun in circles, useless on this alien world. He would have to pick a direction and hope it led somewhere. The singing grew louder, then faded again. It seemed to be coming from the east, where the ground sloped down into a valley. Well, he said to himself, following mysterious singing in an alien forest probably isn't the smartest idea. He looked back at his ruined ship. But staying here isn't much better. Another movement caught his eye. This time he was sure he saw something. A flash of pale skin, much too smooth to be an animal. It vanished behind a tree before he could get a good look. The singing called to him again, and now he could see lights in the valley below. Not the blue glow of the trees, but steady lights that had to be artificial. Signs of intelligence, maybe even civilization. As night fell completely, the forest came alive with strange sounds. Things moved in the darkness between the trees. The lights in the valley seemed very far away. James took a deep breath and started walking. He didn't know what waited for him in the valley, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone on this alien world. James followed the strange lights through the glowing forest, his boots sinking into soil that felt oddly soft, like walking on moss. The singing grew louder, But now he could hear words in it, not any language he knew, but definitely words. They seemed to float through the air like invisible ribbons. The ground suddenly dropped away beneath his feet. James stumbled and slid down a slope covered in tiny crystals that chimed musically as he fell. He landed in a clearing and froze at what he saw. Before him stood a city unlike anything on Earth. Buildings grew from the ground like giant flowers made of crystal and living metal. Vines of light pulsed between the structures, carrying what looked like energy rather than water. The whole city hummed with a soft vibration that he could feel in his bones. Movement caught his eye. A figure stepped out from behind one of the crystal towers. James's breath caught in his throat. She looked almost human, but there was something different about her. Her skin had a slight silvery sheen, and her eyes were larger than human eyes, catching the light like mirrors. Her hair moved as if floating in water, even though there was no wind. She wasn't alone. More figures emerged from the shadows, all female, all with the same otherworldly beauty. They wore clothes that seemed to be made of living light, changing colors as they moved. Hello, James managed to say, raising his empty hands to show he meant no harm. I'm James. My ship crashed. The aliens looked at each other, then back at him. One of them stepped forward, taller than the others, with hair that glowed like starlight. She touched her throat, and a small device there lit up. Male, she said in perfect English, though her voice had an odd echo to it. You are male. James nodded slowly. Yes, I'm a man. A human man. This caused a stir among the group. They began talking rapidly in their musical language, gesturing at him with growing excitement. The tall one raised her hand for silence. We are the luminary, she said. I am first speaker Astra. We have not seen a male of any species in. She paused, seemingly struggling with the concept. In 500 cycles of the triple moons. James looked up and saw 3 moons hanging in the purple sky. 1 silver, 1 gold, and 1 a deep blue. What happened to your men? He asked. Astra's expression darkened. That is a story of great sorrow, she said. But first, you are injured. James touched his head, feeling the dried blood from the crash. He hadn't even noticed the pain until now. Come, Astra said, gesturing toward the crystal city. We will heal you. And then perhaps you can help us understand something we found in the ancient temple. Something that spoke of a visitor from the stars who would either save our world or destroy it completely. James felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm air. One of the younger luminary approached him, carrying what looked like a flower made of light. As she got closer, he realized with shock that he could see right through her, as if she was made partly of energy rather than solid matter. Your arrival was prophesied, the transparent woman said, her voice sounding like wind chimes. But the prophecy didn't say if you were the savior or the destroyer. Astra shot her a warning look. Enough, Lyra. He needs healing first. She turned back to James. Though I must warn you, our healing methods may seem strange to you, and once you enter our city, you may find it difficult to leave. The crystal towers hummed louder, their light pulsing in rhythm with the strange singing that still filled the air. James looked back the way he had come, but the forest path had vanished. He had a choice to make. Trust these beautiful but alien beings, or try to survive alone in the dangerous forest. A shadow passed overhead, something huge and silent. When James looked up, he saw shapes moving in the clouds, too big to be birds, too strange to be ships. You should decide quickly, Astra said softly. The Nightwings will be hunting soon, and they hunger for anything new that enters their territory. The humming of the crystal towers changed tone, becoming more urgent. The luminary began moving toward the city, their light clothes flickering with anxiety. Astra held out her hand to James. In the fading light, he could see that her fingers were webbed with what looked like strands of starlight. Choose now, Starman, she said. Life with us or death in the forest. The prophecy does not tell us which you will pick. That choice is yours alone. Inside the Crystal City, reality seemed to bend in strange ways. James followed Astra through corridors that defied physics. Sometimes they walked on walls, but gravity shifted to make it feel like a floor. The crystal towers weren't just buildings. They were alive, humming with energy, and occasionally moving their positions like giant chess pieces. The healing chamber was a sphere of pure light suspended in midair. As James floated inside it, he watched in amazement as tiny particles of light danced across his wounds, knitting his flesh back together without leaving any scars. "Your biology is fascinating," said Lyra, the transparent luminary. She stood nearby, her form shifting between solid and energy states like a living hologram. "We've never seen a being who stays solid all the time." "What do you mean?" James asked, watching as his reflection in the crystal walls showed multiple versions of himself, each one slightly different, as if showing alternate possibilities. Astra touched the walls, and they became transparent, revealing a vast underground chamber below the city. Thousands of glowing pods filled the space, each containing what looked like a sleeping luminary. "We are not always as we appear," Astra explained. "When the Great Change came, our people evolved. We learned to shift between matter and energy. It helped us survive after." She stopped, pain flickering across her face like lightning. A deep boom echoed through the city. The crystal towers sang in response, their light pulsing rapidly. Through the transparent walls, James saw the three moons align in the purple sky. "The convergence begins," Astra announced. "We must prepare for the welcoming." The other luminary began to gather, their forms becoming more solid. They wore ceremonial robes that seemed to be made from captured starlight, each one unique and mesmerizing. James noticed that some of them appeared to be different ages, but all were female. "Where are the children?" he asked suddenly, realizing he hadn't seen any young ones. The luminary exchanged worried looks. Lyra's form flickered anxiously. "We cannot create new life anymore," Astra said softly. "Not since the men disappeared. We exist in a state of perpetual present, neither living nor dying, neither energy nor matter. That is why your arrival changes everything." The ceremony began with what looked like a dance, but the dancers moved through dimensions James couldn't quite understand. They seemed to step in and out of reality, leaving trails of light behind them like cosmic paint strokes. A feast appeared on tables that grew from the crystal floor. The food looked normal at first, but when James touched it, it changed color and texture to match his exact nutritional needs. He watched in fascination as each luminary's food did the same for them. But during the feast, James noticed something disturbing. In certain lights, he could see through the beautiful illusion of the city. Behind the crystal and light, ancient machinery lay hidden. Some of it looked damaged, barely holding together. "Your city," he said carefully, "it's not just crystal and energy, is it?" Astra's expression became serious. "You see more than most," she said. "No, this." She gestured at the magical-looking surroundings. "This is the beautiful lie we tell ourselves. The truth is much darker." A screech from above interrupted her. Through the crystal ceiling, massive shadows moved across the three moons. The Nightwings were circling closer. "They know you're here," Lyra said, her form becoming almost completely energy. "They can sense solid matter. They remember what we used to be before the change." The crystal towers began to shift position, forming a protective barrier. But James saw cracks in their surfaces, places where the light didn't flow properly. "We need your help, James," Astra said urgently. "Not just as a male to help us reproduce. Our city is dying. The machinery that keeps us in this state is failing. Soon, we will either become pure energy and lose our consciousness forever, or what?" James asked, though he had a feeling he knew what she would say. "Or we will become solid again, like you. And then the Nightwings will finally have what they've been waiting for all these centuries." She looked up at the circling shadows. "Fresh meat, A crystal tower groaned and shifted position. Through a gap in the barrier, James caught a glimpse of one of the Nightwings. It wasn't a creature at all. It was a ship, ancient and organic-looking, piloted by something that glowed with the same energy as the luminary, but twisted and dark. "Those are your men, aren't they?" he whispered. That's what really happened to them. Before Astra could answer, every crystal tower in the city began to sing a warning song. The convergence of the three moons reached its peak, and in that moment, James saw the true face of the city. A massive machine, built to save a species from extinction, now on the verge of catastrophic failure. And circling above, waiting for that failure, were the transformed men of the luminary, twisted by a darkness that promised to return for everyone else. The welcome feast had become something else entirely, a desperate plea for salvation from a fate worse than death. The Crystal Tower's warning song changed to a deeper, more ancient tone. The ground beneath the city trembled as hidden machinery activated. James watched in amazement as the feast hall transformed, the tables melting away into the floor, while the walls became a vast circular chamber lined with artifacts from the luminary's past. "The trial chamber," Astra announced, her voice echoing strangely. "Every 500 cycles, when the three moons align, our laws demand that any outsider must prove their worth." The chamber filled with other luminary, their forms shifting between solid and energy states more rapidly now, creating a dazzling display of light and shadow. Among them, James noticed three who were different. They remained completely solid, like him. Their eyes glowed with an intense blue light. "The triumvirate," Lyra whispered to him. "They remember the time before the change. They are the only ones who still know the full truth." The first of the triumvirate stepped forward. Unlike the other luminaries' flowing light clothes, she wore what appeared to be living metal armor that moved like liquid mercury. "3 trials," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. 3 chances to prove you are not like those who betrayed us. 3 tests to show you can help us survive what comes next." The chamber's floor suddenly became transparent, revealing a vast mechanical heart beating beneath the city. Streams of energy flowed through crystalline veins, but James could see dark spots where the flow was blocked or failing. "First trial. Restore the flow to the dying sectors," the triumvirate member commanded. "But be warned, the energy responds to consciousness. Touch it with fear in your heart, and it will burn you to ash." James approached the nearest crystal vein. Up close, he could see microscopic machines swimming in the energy stream, each one carrying tiny packets of light. Where the flow was blocked, the machines had crystallized, forming barriers. He reached out toward the energy stream, but Lyra caught his arm. "Wait," she said. "Look closer. The machines, they're not just carrying energy. They're carrying memories." James squinted at the flow. Within each light packet, he could see fragments of images, children playing, men and women laughing together, scenes from before whatever catastrophe had changed the luminary forever. Understanding dawned on him. The city wasn't just a machine, it was a vast memory bank, keeping the luminary's past alive. The blockages weren't mechanical failures. They were traumas, places where the memories were too painful to face. The second triumvirate member spoke, her form flickering between young and old. "The second trial. Find the first corruption. Show us where the darkness began." The chamber walls filled with projected images, countless moments from the luminary's history playing simultaneously. James had to focus hard to keep from being overwhelmed by the flood of information. But something caught his eye, a pattern in the chaos. Every few cycles, when the 3 moons aligned, the men of the luminary had performed a ritual in a chamber deep beneath the city. Each time, they emerged slightly changed, their energy patterns showing traces of darkness. It was gradual, James said, pointing to the pattern. They were trying to reach a higher state of evolution, weren't they? But something went wrong. The third triumvirate member stepped forward, her form barely holding together, as if she might dissolve into pure energy at any moment. Final trial. Face what they became. The chamber's ceiling vanished, opening to the purple sky where the Nightwing circled. But now James could see them clearly. Massive organic ships grown from corrupted crystal, piloted by beings that were neither energy nor matter, but something in between. Their forms were tortured, constantly shifting between states, unable to find peace. One of the Nightwings landed on the edge of the open chamber. Its pilot emerged, a twisted version of a luminary male, his form crackling with dark energy. When he spoke, his voice carried the same musical quality as the luminary, but distorted, like a broken instrument. "We found what we sought," the corrupted being said. "Perfect evolution. Freedom from the prison of form. And now we return to free our sisters from their crystalline cage." James looked closer at the machinery beneath the city. The dark spots and the energy flow weren't random. They formed a pattern, a countdown. The whole system wasn't just failing. It was being deliberately corrupted from within. "The men," he said, turning to Astra, "they're not just waiting for the system to fail. They're destroying it themselves." The 3 moons reached perfect alignment overhead. The Nightwings began to descend, their crystal forms resonating with the city's towers. The corrupted energy they carried began to infect the city's systems. James had passed the trials by understanding the truth. But now he faced an even greater challenge: how to save the luminary from both their past and their future, as their transformed men returned to either rescue or destroy them. The crystal towers sang their warning song louder as darkness spread through their veins. Time was running out, and James had to make a choice that would determine the fate of 2 broken halves of a dying species. Above, the Nightwings began their attack, while below, the city's heart started to beat in an unfamiliar rhythm, as if responding to its long-lost children's return. The question was, would this reunion heal the luminary or finally destroy them completely? Time fractured around the city as the Nightwing's corrupted energy collided with the crystal tower's defenses. James watched in horror as moments began to replay and overlap. He could see multiple versions of the same events happening simultaneously, like reality itself was breaking down. "The temporal stabilizers are failing," Astra cried out, her form splitting into several quantum states at once. "Without them, we'll all be trapped in time loops." In the chaos, James noticed something strange. Each time a moment repeated, it played out slightly differently. In one version, the luminary fought back against the Nightwings. In another, they welcomed them. In yet another, the city itself tried to merge with the attacking ships. The triumvirate gathered in a triangle formation, their combined energy creating a bubble of stable time around them. Inside this bubble, they began to reveal the city's deepest secret. "The transformation machine," the first triumvirate member said, projecting an image of a massive device hidden at the city's core. "It wasn't meant to turn us into energy beings. It was meant to let us reach the quantum realm, where all possibilities exist at once." James watched as historical images showed the machine's creation. The luminary had discovered that consciousness itself could exist in multiple states, just like quantum particles. They had tried to evolve beyond the limitations of a single reality. But something had gone terribly wrong. "The men went first," the second triumvirate member explained, her voice echoing across multiple timelines. "They achieved quantum consciousness, but they couldn't handle experiencing every possible reality at once. It drove them mad. A Nightwing ship crashed through one of the crystal towers, but instead of destroying it, the ship began to merge with the city's architecture. The corrupted crystal spread like a virus, creating impossible geometric patterns that hurt James's eyes to look at. Lyra appeared beside him, but now she existed in several places at once, her quantum states visible to the naked eye. "We have to shut down the transformation machine," she said, her voices overlapping. "But if we do, all the luminary will become solid again," James finished, "vulnerable to time, to aging, to death." "Yes," Astra confirmed, struggling to maintain a single form. "But if we don't, the Nightwings will force everyone into quantum consciousness. We'll all become like them, experiencing every possible reality forever, unable to choose just one. The third triumvirate member raised her hands, and the floor became transparent, revealing the transformation machine below. It was a sphere of pure possibility, showing every choice that had ever been or could be made. "There's something else," James said, noticing a pattern in the machine's energy flow. "The men, they're not trying to attack the city. They're trying to complete the transformation. They think if everyone enters the quantum state, they'll finally have someone to share their eternal existence with." A voice boomed across all timelines, the leader of the Nightwings, existing in countless realities at once. "We found paradise," he said, his words fracturing into infinite variations. "Infinite existence, infinite possibility. Why do you cling to your single, limited reality?" The transformation machine's power surged, sending waves of quantum energy through the city. James watched in amazement as luminary began to split into their quantum states involuntarily. Some fought it, trying to remain solid. Others embraced it, their consciousness expanding across multiple realities. But in every timeline, the city's crystal heart was failing. "We have to choose," Astra said, fighting to maintain coherence. "Quantum existence or mortality. There is no middle ground anymore." James looked around at the fracturing reality. In one timeline, he saw himself joining the Nightwings, experiencing the infinite. In another, he helped the luminary shut down the machine. In yet another, he tried to find a compromise and failed spectacularly. The three moons reached their apex, their combined light creating a lens that focused on the city. The transformation machine responded, its power building toward a critical point that would force everyone into quantum consciousness. But James had noticed something no one else had, a pattern in the chaos, a possibility that existed in the overlap between realities. If he could just reach it. "There's another way," he said, stepping toward the machine. "But it requires understanding why the transformation went wrong in the first place." The Nightwings descended, the luminary prepared for their final choice, and James reached for a truth that existed somewhere between all possible realities, a solution that might save both halves of this fractured species. Time itself held its breath as all possibilities converged on this one crucial moment. As James reached into the transformation machine's quantum field, his consciousness expanded. Suddenly, he could see the true nature of the luminary's world. It wasn't just another planet, but a nexus point where multiple dimensions intersected. The ancient temple Astra had mentioned wasn't built by the luminary at all. It emerged from the quantum foam of reality itself, a structure that existed in all possible universes simultaneously. Its walls were covered in equations that weren't written, but rather existed as pure mathematical truth made visible. "The temple," James gasped, his mind struggling to process multiple realities at once. "It's not just a building. It's a manual. The universe trying to teach developing species how to transcend their dimensional limitations." The Nightwings halted their attack, hovering in complex geometric patterns that spelled out words in five-dimensional space. The corrupted males were responding to James's revelation. "But you misunderstood the message," James continued, reading the temple's quantum equations. "The transformation wasn't supposed to be permanent. Look." He gestured at the mathematical truths flowing around them. In the quantum state, everyone could see what he saw. The temple's instructions were meant to teach species how to shift between quantum and solid states at will, not to force them to choose one or the other. The first Nightwing leader landed, his form a cascade of possibilities. "Impossible," he said, his voice resonating across dimensions. "We achieved perfection. Infinite existence." "No," James corrected, pointing to a particular equation. "You achieved infinite division. Instead of learning to control quantum shifting, you fragmented yourselves across all possibilities. You're not experiencing everything. You're experiencing nothing completely." Astra floated forward, her quantum states beginning to synchronize as she understood. The transformation machine isn't failing, she realized. It's trying to reset itself. to teach us the correct way. The crystal towers began to pulse with new energy, but this time it wasn't chaotic. The light formed patterns that matched the temple's equations. The city wasn't just a shelter. It was a training ground designed to help the luminary master dimensional shifting gradually. Lyra's multiple states collapsed into a single form as she grasped the truth. The men, they weren't meant to go first. We were supposed to learn together, each gender mastering different aspects of quantum existence. Balance. Deep beneath the city, something ancient awakened. The quantum foam itself began to take shape, forming into a being of pure dimensional energy. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. At last, understanding dawns. The entity revealed itself as a guardian, one of many scattered across the universe, placed to guide developing species toward dimensional transcendence. It had been waiting in the temple all along, watching the luminary's progress. Your species, divided self, the guardian explained, its words appearing as crystalline structures in the air. Male and female, solid and energy, past and future. But evolution requires humanity, not division. The Nightwings began to resonate with the Guardian's energy. For the first time in centuries, their quantum states started to stabilize. They could see their mistake. They hadn't evolved. They'd fractured themselves. But the revelation came with a price. The city's systems, designed to maintain the luminary's partial energy state, began to shut down. Without the transformation machine's forced field, everyone would return to solid form. Not return. James corrected his own thoughts, understanding blossoming. Progress. You have to become fully physical again before you can learn true quantum shifting. Like learning to walk before you can run. The Guardian's form shifted, revealing glimpses of other species across the universe learning the same lessons. Some succeeded, achieving controlled quantum existence. Others failed, fragmenting themselves like the luminary males had. Choose, the Guardian said, humanity or division, progress or stagnation. All possibilities exist, but only one path leads to true evolution. The three moons aligned perfectly overhead, creating a lens that focused the Guardian's energy. The moment of choice had arrived. But now it was clear that the choice wasn't between solid and quantum states. It was between facing reality together or remaining eternally divided. The transformation machine hummed one final time, offering either controlled shutdown or complete quantum fragmentation. The fate of the entire species hung on what happened next. And in that moment, both Luminary and Nightwings realized that their separation had never been about evolution at all. It was about fear. Fear of losing control, fear of change, fear of having to face mortality and uncertainty together. The Guardian waited silently as the species that had divided itself faced its moment of truth. Quantum foam swirled around them all, showing infinite possibilities, but only one true path forward. In the quantum-charged atmosphere of the ancient city, all possibilities collapsed into a single defining moment. The Guardian's energy merged with the three moons' alignment, creating a temporal lens that showed every choice and its consequences simultaneously. Look, James said, pointing to the shifting patterns. The transformation machine wasn't just changing your physical form. It was trying to merge your collective consciousness to prepare you for something bigger. The quantum patterns revealed a stunning truth. The Luminary's world was itself alive, a sentient planet that had been guiding their evolution. The crystal towers weren't buildings. They were the planet's neurons, reaching up through dimensions to communicate with its inhabitants. The Nightwing ships began to crystallize in new patterns, resonating with the planet's frequency. The corrupted males inside felt their quantum states stabilizing for the first time in centuries as the planet's consciousness touched their fragmented minds. We are not separate, Astra realized, her form shifting between states with new control. The city, the planet, the moons, they're all part of one vast organism. And we. are its children, the Nightwing leader finished, his tortured form beginning to find balance between solid and quantum states, not its masters. The Guardian's form expanded, revealing the true scope of the experiment. Across the galaxy, other sentient planets were nurturing their own species, teaching them to transcend dimensional barriers. The Luminary weren't alone in their journey. The transformation machine's core opened like a flowering quantum crystal, revealing chambers meant for both male and female luminary. The design was clear now. They were meant to transform together, supporting each other through the process. The machine doesn't force the change, James explained, seeing the patterns clearly. It creates a safe space for natural evolution. But you have to choose it willingly, and you have to choose it together. Lyra stepped forward, her quantum states aligning in a new way. Then let us choose together. Now, all of us. The Nightwings landed, their crystalline ships merging with the city's towers. The corrupted males emerged, their forms still shifting, but now with purpose rather than chaos. The luminary women approached them, centuries of separation dissolving in the quantum field. The Guardian spoke one last time. The liaison is errand, but the hardest part remains. The planet's crystalline neurons pulsed with energy as the transformation machine powered up, not to force a change, but to create a protected space for natural evolution. This time, there would be no separation, no fragmentation. Astra turned to James. Will you help us? We need someone who understands both solid and quantum existence. James looked at the quantum patterns swirling around them. He saw infinite possibilities. Futures where he returned to Earth, futures where he stayed, futures where he became something entirely new. But the Guardian had taught him something crucial. True choice wasn't about seeing all possibilities. It was about choosing one path and committing to it fully. The three moons' alignment reached its absolute peak. The planet's consciousness surged through the crystal towers. The transformation machine hummed with perfectly balanced energy. In that moment, James made his choice. But it wasn't the choice anyone expected. The machine isn't just for the luminary, he said, understanding blooming in his mind. It's for any species ready to evolve, including humans. He stepped into the transformation chamber, but not alone. Astra joined him on one side, a Nightwing male on the other. Around them, pairs of luminary men and women entered other chambers, their quantum states beginning to synchronize. The Guardian's form shifted one final time, revealing its true purpose, not just to guide, but to witness the birth of new multidimensional beings. As the transformation began, the Crystal City sang a new song, not of separation or fear, but of unity and evolution. The three moons cast their light through the quantum lens, illuminating a path that no one had seen before, a way for all sentient beings to grow beyond their original limitations, while keeping their essential selves intact. The Luminary's world had never been just a planet. It was an incubator, preparing its children for a greater existence. And now, with the barrier between male and female, solid and quantum finally dissolved, that existence was within reach. The transformation machine activated one last time. But now it worked as intended, not forcing change, but nurturing it. Not dividing consciousness, but expanding it. And in that moment of perfect unity, something new was born. Not just a transformed species, but a new way of being, one that would ripple across the galaxy, showing other worlds that evolution didn't have to mean losing yourself. It meant finding your true form together. The crystal towers blazed with light as the transformation reached its peak, and the future unfolded in ways no one could have predicted, not even in quantum space. The story of the Luminary wasn't ending. It was just beginning. And somewhere, on Earth, humanity's own transformation machine was waiting to be discovered.